With the many needs that are happening in the world, it can be sometimes overwhelming to wonder how we can do our part to help those who may be suffering or struggling in even small ways.
Today we're talking to John and Chase Hansen, a father-son duo who have figured out how to get close to the people experiencing homelessness in their communities. Their story helps us to realize how we don't need to do something huge to make a huge difference. Join us today on Go and Be.
Sweet Salt. Save 15% at Seagull Book and sweetsaltclothing.com.
Hello and welcome to another fun episode of Go and Be. I am your host, Christie Gardner, and I am joined by your host, Michelle McCullough. And we are here today to talk to two amazing people, John and Chase Hansen. And John and Chase, I actually met at a summit for opioid addiction, where we were joining as members of the community to try to see how we could help people in our community who have opiate addiction. And that is where we met. And I was so blown away and impressed by this little kid. He was 9 years old when I met him. He's 11 now, is that right?
That is correct.
11. And here was this 9-year-old kid. And I asked him what he was doing there, and I expected a 9-year-old answer. And what I got instead was a child who may be 9, but is full of wisdom. And he talked about his mission, helping people in the community who are experiencing homelessness. And he wants to get one-on-one with people experiencing homelessness. We're excited to have you guys here today.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's good to be here.
Thank you. We're also excited because we want to not just talk about your mission and hear about what you're up to and what you're doing, but we also want to inspire others to find the things that they feel passionate about and how they can show up in the world at any age or stage in life. So we're excited to have you and to dive into this conversation, but we'd love for you to start by telling us how this all started, because it was kind of accidental.
So there was a comic convention down at Salt Lake City, Utah, and when I went there, I was dressed up as Captain America, had my little shield, and I was walking down. And we crossed by some homeless people, and I asked my dad, who are these people? And he said, they're homeless people. And then I said, how do we help these people? And he said, ask them. So trying to figure out how to ask people who are suffering and who I might be scared of, I didn't have a clue to where to start. I mean, when you're 6 years old, how do you talk to a homeless person? So we started thinking, well, if we give them a Subway sandwich or a couple of Jamba Juices, they'll maybe want to talk to us. So on a hot summer day, we went down to Pioneer Park and passed out Jamba Juices. The first person we came across was someone who's just released from the hospital. And I had a little conversation with her, and from that I realized there's no need to be afraid. These are just people who are in a lower or less situation than us. We need to be friends with them. We need to encourage them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And when you were able to give them a Jamba Juice or share a sandwich with them, what are some of the things that you learned from that experience?
Well, I learned what kind of hardships they go through. I learned what types of suffering they go through, and I learned how I can impact their life in a meaningful way. I learned what they need and how I could be their friend.
What I love about this is that as an adult, I just hear you tell this story and I think to myself, oh, I would be worried about this, or I would be worried about that, or what if they asked me for something I couldn't do, or what? And I love the confidence and the way that you approach that. I would love for you to share, Dad, a little bit about your journey watching him take this on, what that has meant to you and how you have tried to foster that kind of feeling with him.
Yeah, I think I was just excited to spend meaningful time. I didn't really think that we were going to get into researching the opioid crisis. To me, I just wanted to be with my son and do something that was impactful, teach him about the world a little bit. So for us, we would just spend time getting lost in the city. You jump on tracks at any point and you just go, right? Like if you're on a mission to serve others, you just look for opportunities to engage. And so that's tactile learning. Chase and I really were trying to serve in impactful manners. And so conversations with individuals is really interesting. Like people who suffer amongst us, oftentimes we just don't have opportunities to really find out who they are and to hear their story. So for me, I just got to witness really, really beautiful moments that my little son, who's heartfelt and wanted to make a difference in somebody's life, would sit with them. That was an intuitive process, because you're right. There's a lot of people out there I wouldn't want my son around. But when you intuitively are present and mindful of others, you just are guided to the right people. And that's where magic happens, when you have conversations with individuals that are different.
Yeah. And I think we realize that we're more the same than different. We're more like each other than we are unlike each other. So what is one story or experience that you have had that has made an impact on your life?
I would say one story is probably Leonard Zalon's story. He was kicked out of his house, and he didn't have anywhere to go. So he grabbed his tent and some supplies and started camping out near a grocery unit in South Jordan. And we stumbled across him a couple times and just said hi, introduced ourselves, and had a tiny conversation, and went on our way. One day we found Leonard sleeping right in front of a Walgreens, and it turns out they were doing construction there, and they just kicked him out and threw away all of his stuff because he wasn't present at the time. So he was sleeping on a Walgreens, trying to get by in the cold winter. This was in December, November-ish kind of time, and it was super hard for Leonard. He was suffering. He was cold, and we were able to help him and get into a little hotel for all of winter, because that was in 2018, and we all know how cold it was. It was miserable. We were able to get him into a little apartment, and we were able to get him a little storage unit he could store his stuff. He ended up living in it for a couple months, but then he was able to move into housing, and right now he's in housing just trying to live through the pandemic. It's been amazing seeing how our friendship has evolved through the course of 4 years, just becoming his friend and just taking him to lunch and breakfast and finding him in places like Taco Bell, just hanging out, reading his daily paper.
I love how you talk about having meals with Leonard, right? And that's something that you have made a really important part of your ministry, and you call your ministry Project Empathy, right?
Right.
So tell me, how many people have you been able to have a meal with over the course of these years?
Over 130. We've documented them and not documented them. Just instead of writing on a notepad, we put the notepad aside and stopped seeing them as a research experience. We started seeing them as friends. So when we put that notepad aside, they opened up more and they became our friend.
And what does that feel like to be friends with people?
Well, through 30 minutes to an hour time frame, just talking with someone who we never would normally talk to feels great. We get to learn about this person, learn about their stories, and sometimes they have action-packed movie stories, jumping train to train, or they ended up in Utah just trying to find a relative, or just move down here for a business trip.
Oh, you say that it's about stories, and I love that. Now, when I met you, John, you talked to me about how this for you is more than just something to do with your son, but you really see it as a way to help Chase with his ministering efforts. And I thought that that was really fascinating, because when we met, Chase was just 9 years old, and I thought, ministering for a 9-year-old, really? and we didn't even call it, we had just barely started calling it ministering, actually. And so tell me a little bit about that, because you see this as a way to usher him into ministering. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I love the fact that Chase goes to church so frequently and learns such important things that really sometimes are harder to apply in the real world. Loving our neighbor is the prime directive, yet how do you grow that muscle? And then how do you overcome fear? And so for me, it was really taking the essence of all the superhero movies that we watched and all the stories that we read and my scouts and my own personal mission, and trying to come up with ways that me and Chase could actually be impactful, not just feed somebody, but really find out what's going on. Like, why is there a state of emergency in our country? And why are there people that are harming themselves? And why is there so many news stories about depression here in Utah. So we wanted to really understand it, but also use that time to grow. And so for me, to be able to teach leadership or to get Chase ready for a future mission, it's really about moments right now that he learns to stretch and be uncomfortable, but be safe. But take random samples of people that are different, and that grows somebody's emotional intelligence, and it grows their capacity to just simply love and to find out maybe how to have conversations with people who are difficult. And that allows just the practice of what we call ministry, like in the church. It's the moment that you find out what you have in common with somebody, having time with somebody, finding out what somebody's strengths and passions are, the way that the Savior might view them. So we went out to test it, and we did it on tracks, and we did it in Denny's, and we did it in McDonald's, and we did it at City Creek Mall. There's people everywhere who are hungry for an authentic conversation and for someone to see them. Where it was powerful with Chase when we switched from me taking the senior role to Chase navigating a complex relationship or a complex conversation, to me it was just beautiful for Chase to see them the way that he saw them. He didn't look at them like a opioid user without teeth. He just saw them as a human and was curious what their favorite superhero movie was.
I love that. So Chase, tell me a little bit, you have spent a lot of time having some of these conversations, and then when you have the conversations, you discover that there's a need, and then from there, little projects come. I was impressed about all the things that I've seen that you kind of spearheaded as a result of hearing about a need and then involving others into bringing that up to pass. How does that work?
So when we meet with people, we hear a lot of stuff that's happening to them. They can't see their daughter. They can't talk to their family members. They can't see their kids. And this story might be the same as person A's person that we just talked to 30 minutes ago. And it's the same story. How do we help both of those people? The answer is through positive human connection, positive human interaction, trying to find ways as a group to collaborate and solve their problems. Earning it and creating empathy, dignity, and authenticity for those people is what we all try to do.
So you've done this in a lot of different ways. Talk to us about getting people mattresses, for instance.
So Lisa, we partnered up with about 2 years ago, and they reached out to us and said, we want to do some community service. We've heard a lot about you guys, and we just want to hear your ideas. So we had just been working with this place downtown, you're going to have to remember.
Rescue Mission.
The Rescue Mission. And they had a little store called Down East, right? Sorry, I'm not good with names.
It's great.
It's been a while. But, and they sell us a mattress, so they sell us mattresses. So we were wondering, how do we help these people? And as we were going down there, we were hearing a lot about how much they need mattresses and how much they're not getting a good night's rest because like how stale and how hard their mattresses are. So we were talking with Lisa and said, if we can get a couple mattresses, that would be great for them, just to help them. So some of the Lisa mattress people came down from California to help with this project, and we ended up getting a couple hundred mattresses and a lot of sheets and a lot of volunteers to come out, help unbox these and put these on the beds.
That's amazing. And tell me a little bit about how you see this as a missionary experience.
So I've been doing this for a couple years now. Definitely like 9 or 11, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years now. And through these experiences, I've seen a lot of people suffering and hurting. And we've had these up. It's about 3 missions. So when I got out of the baptismal font, I hugged my dad and said, "Dad, I want to go on a mission." And he's like, "You have been on one." And I said, "How can I continue?" And he said, "Do more serving. Be the good." So we started trying to think. That's when I got serious. That's when, bang, that's the starting point for me getting real serious.
You were all in.
Yeah, I'm like, we gotta help these people. So we were thinking of ways we can try to help people, and that's where the name Project Empathy came from, and that's when we started involving other people to join us.
I love that.
I do too.
Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. Okay, so I'm going to ask you both the same question, but I want you to speak to a different group of people. So Chase, I would love for you to share, if there were kids watching this show with their parents, what advice would you give them on how they can be more confident in the ways that they serve? And then John, I'd like you to do the same for parents. What would you say to our audience of parents on how they can foster this within their own kids?
Well, I would say just go out there and do stuff. I don't want you to go out on your own, go out on tracks and find a homeless person. I want you to go with a parent. Try to find little small acts to bring the greater good. Just say hi to a person. Smile at someone you see is suffering and has a sign. Just say hi to them. Be their friend for 30 seconds. It's not that hard, but it might be scary. It's a start to doing something good.
I love that.
I think as dads, it's our job to teach what's not taught in school. And it's taught in churches, but the application of some of the things that we want our kids to feel needs to be led through experiences. So I would say go get lost on adventures, have meaningful time with your sons and your daughters, and help them just simply be aware of the world around them. And when they're in touch intuitively with the mission, and when they're prayerfully looking for opportunities, they'll find them. And so it's moments like that where you allow your child to take lead in conversing with a stranger is what, for me, makes a great difference.
I appreciate that.
That's so amazing. So for me, it is powerful when we can show up in the world and get proximate, get close to the people around us. It's when we see ourselves as the same and not different that we really have the power to change the world. And I think that your story has shown us that you don't have to wait until you're a grown-up to change the world, right? And even if it's something like helping the people experiencing homelessness, or even if it's something like helping your neighbor across the street, it doesn't matter what the thing is. It just matters that when the Spirit speaks to your heart, you show up and you get brave and you go forward, right?
Right. That is exactly my philosophy. You don't have to wait till you're growing up to do a lot of things except drive. When you're 4, don't drive, please. Anyway, you don't have to wait till you're 24 or 16 to do a lot of this stuff. You can help small acts, kind of like helping Mrs. Sorensen across the street mow her lawn, helping feed her cats while she's out. Just helping do small acts that you might not think, oh, that's not helping the community. Just doing those tiny small acts that are just little helpful reminders, help wash the dishes, help with your mom with the baby. Those tiny small acts can create a huge difference in the lives of others.
I love that. It's that ripple effect, right? So has there been anything in this whole experience that has been really hard about it? Because I think we love to talk about the things that are magical and wonderful, but I think the hard parts are also part of the journey. So what's something that's been hard about it, both for you, Chase, and you, John?
The hard part for me is probably just trying to gather the courage to go to speak to those at the start. I know I can do it. Like, yeah, I'm a pro at this, but like, you kind of feel that thing. Wait, what if I don't? What if I screw up? What if I'm scared and run out the subway window? So I think to myself, these are people who need help. What would Jesus do? WWJD. What would he do? How would he help these people? And that's what I think. How do I help these people? What would Jesus do?
I love that. What about you, John? What has been difficult or challenging, or what have you had to overcome to be able to engage in Project Empathy?
I just didn't know that there were that many people who struggled here in Utah, right? Just so many people that might be experiencing despair. And so the ultimate loss of family and place, and we see those people right across the street downtown Salt Lake. And so we couldn't provide housing and all the services that these folks need. We could just provide what we could provide in the moment, inject into them as much positivity and love. But being helpless not to be able to help all of those that we came across was really something that was hard for me. So.
And how did you overcome that?
Our hope, right, is that our state could produce something different. So our hope is that we could change the game for so many people who struggle. And so I think that going through hours and hours and hours of combing the county was fun and engaging, but also was sad in some ways, and really kind of inspired Chase and I to look at, like, well, what do we do different to change the game? And it's really, ministry is like the key. It's like when you serve others with your soul, as long as you take it from the right game, the right perspective, it elevates individuals and starts to heal people. So we get excited thinking about, well, what could we do here if people could become intentional and if it was easy to schedule? So that's kind of where Project Empathy really, for us, is powerful. But it took a lot of time. You know, it took a lot of sacrifice. It took some money. But for me, it was worth it because we got a lot out of it.
Right. And I love how you're showing up even though it's hard. I think it's important to recognize that when the Spirit speaks to our heart and puts a mission within our hearts, it isn't going to be easy, and we aren't going to be able to help everyone. But just doing something, just doing what you can do, showing up where you are with what you have, is really all that Christ asks of us, right?
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, to your point, I think it can get overwhelming if you say, here are all the problems. I have to solve all these problems. But I love your approach in saying, I may not be able to do everything, but I could do this. I could have a conversation. I can bring a smoothie. I can bring a sandwich. I can have meaningful conversations with people. And that's something each of us can do.
Yeah.
We love Jenny Dew's recipe for serving the poor, right? It's just spend your time. And so if it's not about stuff, really, the question is how do we spend time with those that need us?
Ah, I like that.
No, I was just going to say, so there are people that watch this show, and many are from Utah, but they're from also lots of different places. But there are lots of cities with humans experiencing homelessness. Is there anything that you have seen in your work where you think this is a big need and we really need to tackle this particular issue or this particular cause that would really benefit and bless them all over the country?
Do you want me to answer that? I think that there's 500,000 people in our country that go without a place where they belong. How do you begin to address that when you can't really hire enough mental health workers, and that comes from the breakdown of family? So really what we see is needed is there's food, there's used clothing everywhere for those folks. There's a place where people can go when they're hungry. There really isn't a place that you can go to have a positive conversation with a disciple who just wants to be there in the moment to view you as you are, right? So that's, to me, the need is like that prescription for human connection that a doctor would write is the exact same thing that the Samaritan story is about. It's the moment in time that I pivot from what I'm doing to carry someone out. It's the one. And so for us, we're curious. Conversations were great. That's like gathering intelligence, feeling your way through different humans. Sometimes you're called, right, to like take somebody out, and you can't do the work for somebody. So really it requires holding space for someone, and that takes a lot of work, and it's not pleasant. That requires a commitment that you can't really be assigned, and so you have to choose it. And there's enough need all over our country that if each one just took somebody, stuck with them for a little tiny bit, what is it that you need? Who are you? What do you want? Those kind of questions just require persistence, but isn't that the exact same thing that we're trying to do in our wards? So we get better at that oftentimes when we just practice. So like when we go out into the community and practice being brave. That allows us to take that back home and maybe apply it closer to home to develop the relationships that we need.
So you're telling me that if I'm willing to go out and be vulnerable and see someone else, then it's easier for me to see and be seen at home?
I think that compassion and emotional intelligence, empathy, the ability to be a great minister is really just the ability to be present and to lift someone up. That's a spiritual muscle that requires training. So you can read a lot, but now you got to go out there and apply it. Sometimes when you apply it outside of your neighborhood boundaries, it shakes things up. And when you get better at connecting with others that you normally wouldn't, if you take that skill set back home and apply it to those that are close to you, it's really about developing trust.
I really relate to what you're saying, because sometimes for me, when I think of the word minister, I think of an assignment, or I think someone's assigned to me and I'm assigned to someone, and that doesn't feel organic. But as I go out into the community, it's easier for me to connect with other people. So if I'm able to take those skills into my ministry, into the assignment, if you will, then I will improve, and then possibly I'll be able to help someone in a better, more effective way.
That's exactly right. Project Empathy for us is just really the practice of trying to be empathetic. But it has a benefit not only to the listener, but also the sharer. So we're curious how that might work, and if we could pull that off here, and then if other states might duplicate.
Join us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chase, tell me a miracle that you have seen, either in your own life or the life of your dad or the life of someone you care about, because you've engaged in this work.
Well, a good example of that is, again, Leonard Zalonzik. As I said, he was not doing so good. It was super cold, and my dad's ward down there, and a ward right next to him, they all pitched in to try to help him. They all on Christmas Eve, we got him in this really, really nice hotel, and a couple families came over and gave him little presents. The little hotel clerk gave him some gloves and a hat, which was super nice. And just everybody pitching in to help Leonard Zalonzik have a couple of Christmas presents and just help him out with some needs was really special. It was
so I think amazing. The miracle wasn't just for Leonard, probably, right? The miracle was for every one of those people who were able to participate. Well, if you are wondering why we are asked to be like little children, why Christ wanted to gather the children and to bless them, I don't think you need to look any further than the example that Chase has given us today. So we ask all of our guests one question at the end of every episode, and that is this, and I'd love to hear from both of you. If you could give people one piece of advice on how to go and be in the world, what would it be?
I would say be the good, do the good, and try everything just to help a little, just to help. Just a tiny small act. Saying hi, smiling, being a friend for just a couple seconds. That's all homeless people need. Just kind of go and be the good.
I would say to be brave. Like, we take in all this information and we have so much that we're grateful for, but to go out there and to try it just requires application of it.
Have a little empathy, dignity, and authenticity. Listen, connect, serve.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for being part of our conversation today. We are so honored at being in the middle of this conversation, where we can see where you've come from, and we know that you have so much more to do, and we cheer you on in that.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. And thank you for watching and being part of our conversation. Wherever you are and whatever you do, the good little deeds matter, and little things add up to being big and important. And so we hope that you will continue to be part of this conversation. We'd love to hear some of the things that you're doing, or other people that you see who are just doing little tiny acts in great ways that see others. We would love to share some of that goodness in the comments below. So please participate with us. Feel free to share this episode for other people you think might need to see it and will be inspired by John and Chase and their story. And make sure you subscribe so that you can see our next episodes coming up soon. And until then, we wish you all the best and happiness as you consider these simple principles that have the power to not just change your life, but other lives as well. So go and be ministers. Go and be people who are willing to be brave and find simple things that they can do to change the world. Go and be.
Sweet Salt. Save 15% at Seagull Book and SweetSaltClothing.com.